Welcome to Social Work Scrapbook. My name is Lauren, and in today's video, I am tackling the social work scary stuff. I posted over in my Instagram stories a few weeks ago a question. I wanted to know what scared you about social work. So if you're not following over there on Instagram, please do so. It's a great, growing, thriving community where you can get support, tips. I had so many fears. You all got very transparent. So this is my response. I'm going to share all of the ways that I manage these very same fears and anxieties. Oh, I forgot my coffee. The fear of feeling emotionally drained and it affecting my own mental health. This is where self-care is going to be very, very important. Self-care did originate with the helping professions, nurses, social workers, trauma workers, people that are always in a constant flood of trauma. Although it's kind of gotten watered down to bubble baths and coffee and manicures and things like that, it's so much more than that. Self-care is an individualized plan where you learn about yourself from the inside out. So there is a lot of inner work. The next fear that I want to discuss is the fear of being afraid of your own inability to leave work at work. And this comes in from an intern that says she's always thinking about her students. Take a breath and relax. I actually think it's a strength of yours. The fact that you're taking your clients or your students or whoever you're working with as an intern, you're taking that home with you and processing it. I say that's a very good sign, and here's why. All this means is that you're continuing to process what's happening in session or at your internship. That's basically where the School of Social Work wants you to be. As you get further on in your social work career, that's gonna fade away. Now, if you are working and bringing work home, you're bordering burnout or compassion fatigue. So you do need to be sure that you're staffing this case, you're looking deeper into yourself because there is something there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's probably time to start activating that self-care plan. The next fear is the fear that you won't be able to provide the amount of emotional support needed. So there are different levels of social work, and there's not one that's better or worse than the other. But in this situation, if you really feel like deep inside that you can't sit with someone during trauma or during their time of crisis, there are other branches of social work that do tend to lean away from the touchy-feeling type of social work, and that would be macro social work, community and administrative leadership. The next fear is not knowing the best way to help a client, not knowing what to say or ask in a session and just going blank. I used to always fear this one. The key here is to be and stay present in front of the client in the session. And when you're present, you're gonna see the areas where you need to begin challenging. And if you are in session drawing a blank, then it's perfectly okay to let the client know where you are mentally and emotionally. You may be aligning with the client and with the feeling that they have. That might be what they need to hear, is that common ground where we're lost together, and that's okay because this is a tricky situation. It's that validation. The next fear is that you'll one day be subpoenaed. And this certain person said that it's happened before to them, but they didn't end up using them. And honestly, that is the common situation with subpoenas, is that they happen. It's happened to me once, and I was really nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I called my supervisor up. I'm like, what do I do? But if you have your documentation lined up and you're doing what you need to be doing, that's the end of it. Keep your notes very clean and concise, not too many identifying details. The fear of not making money and being constantly stressed. So if you're starting off with an LBSW or a bachelor's in social work, then you are going to be limited in the amount of income that you can make. A lot of these are your case managers that don't make a whole lot of money. At the master's level, still there are entry-level jobs, and entry-level jobs are just like what they sound. Everything is a process and a step up. Your very first job may not be a very high-paying job. At the same time, you may not be able to negotiate a high-paying salary. It's very important to respect that and understand that. That doesn't mean you're not going to grow within the field and step up and earn more and more. The earning potential is high, especially if you have your master's. once you gain experience. Add more credentials to yourself, whether it be certificates, whether it be the clinical license, becoming a board approved supervisor. All these things are going to add to your financial gain. You will be able to live. I know that's one of the stigmas that goes around, is that social workers, like the starving social worker, homeless social, I've seen so many things. It's just not true. The next fear is the fear of failure and rejection. If you're thinking like you have to rescue clients and you're failing at that, then we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. A lot of the clients we work with are dealing with symptoms of a major issue that has been happening almost sometimes through generations, sometimes societal. So we want to make sure that we're not feeling like a failure if we don't get a client to move in the right direction. The next fear is the fear of home visits, having social anxiety and getting yelled at or attacked by a client, bed bugs. I've never been attacked. Let me just put that out there. I've never been attacked. I've never gotten bed bugs. If you ever feel uncomfortable on a home visit, you simply state or in your documentation that you just couldn't do it. Always keep your safety first. And if you have a vibe, if you're getting that inner instinct that something isn't right or safe, make up an excuse and get out of there. There are several different things that you can do to maintain safety when you're on these home visits. And I do have a video up and I'll link it in the cards above. Make sure that you watch that, because even reading the comments, you get so many more tips to being safe. The fear of not being able to address the elephant in the room or not being any help. Sometimes it's a little scary to point out the real issue. So once we've kind of built rapport and we're moving along in sessions and we have that trust is built with the client, we do need to start pointing out what is kind of pushing the problem along or adding to the problem. There's very eloquent ways to go about this. The more rapport you have, the easier it is to bring these types of elephants out of the mist. There's the fear of doing something wrong and messing up a client's life. As long as you keep hope thriving in the walls of that session, then you're good. Then you're not going to ruin anybody's life. Sometimes a client feels like you're ruining their life when you're going to report something. So it's always important to be sure that they truly understand what that confidentiality statement is. The fact that you have to report if they're unsafe. Be sure they get that, because that's really the only way you can ruin someone's life, is if you crush hope entirely, or if you maintain confidentiality when someone is crying out for help. I have my coffee here to remind me to slow down, although I think it's making me go faster. I'm running through these fast because this is just a really quick Q&A type of video, but if you want to hear more in depth about any of the topics that I'm talking about, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to make a video specifically going into details. The next fear is the fear of being stuck with one population or focus and never advancing. Social work has so many different populations and you don't want to get stuck on just one, or maybe you do. It's really important that before you go into your MSW program, you try to solidify which population is one of your favorites, or at least your top 3 populations, and then you go from there, because that's how you're going to choose your courses and your internship experiences and things like that. I had a few populations when I was starting out that I wanted to work with, and then I gravitated towards the one that I have the most strengths in. So for example, I started off being very interested in criminal type of social work. I did apply for a few social work positions in the prison system, didn't get the jobs. It just wasn't for me at that time. I ended up going instead to juvenile detention and really connecting with that population, with juveniles, and that's where my strength lies. I think that at the time of interviewing, I may have been too young. I didn't have that experience needed to go into an adult jail system, but now I feel like if I wanted to apply and switch over, I could. I have enough experience, and that's a lot to be said for the field of social work, because there's a lot of other fields where you just can't do that. The next fear is doing harm or damage as a white person. When I saw this pop up as an Instagram response, I kind of did a little cheer in the back of my head. Once you can realize that there is a white privilege, which is where I feel this question is coming from, this person gets it, I don't have any fear. I think once you realize that you can possibly do damage as a member of a certain culture or a certain race, even as a privileged person, And if you're going to your master's level, going through school, you are technically privileged. To some of these clients that we work with, never stop learning. Always be sure that you're immersing yourself in different cultures. You're being culturally humble and accepting of wherever your client is coming from. The next fear is the fear that you've been in the field for only a year and you feel like you're already starting to burn out. Burnout is something that I think all social workers go through at some point. As I mentioned before, self-care is the antidote to burnout. Each self-care plan is going to be specific to you. So your stressors are not going to be the same as mine, and they're not going to look the same either. I know I get physically sick when I'm already midway through burning out. Before that comes taking work home, feeling like I can't get a grasp of what I'm doing and falling behind in documentation. That's how I know that I'm starting to hit a burnout phase. And then I know what I have to do to bring myself back. So for me, it's spending time with family. It's doing more one-on-one sessions, because what really tends to burn me out is the administrative role. Okay, the next fear is the fear of not being able to find a healthy balance between work and home life. I chose school social work because I know I wanted to have a school schedule. I wanted to be able to be with my kids during the summers and the winter breaks and to know what was happening in their schools because I work for the school district that they attend. That was important to me. The next fear is the fear of not doing enough. I hear this one a lot, and the truth is you are enough. You're enough. You are very rare in this world. Someone to sit with and talk to and listen. Someone that just listens. That's a rarity. So you are enough. Please, please practice self-care. You are certainly worth it. Next fear is the fear of being overwhelmed emotionally. Sometimes I do go into work just drained, then that's a day I won't see clients. I draw my boundary. I'll do documentation instead. I'll do clerical type of inputting different stats. I'll do some research. I'll read. The next fear is the fear of not having a supportive team or a supportive supervisor. My first few jobs, there wasn't that sense of team when I was at work around my colleagues, and that can be very draining. It's important to at least make one friend, one colleague that understands you. And if you can't find that, jump on social media. I know it sounds silly, but head on over to my Instagram. That's where I'm most present. That's where I'm finding so many helpful resources and social work pages and individuals like you and I that are just in this fight. As far as supervision, if you're needing support, find a coach. There are some that are out there, and that's actually a service that I'm going to start very, very soon. I am a board approved supervisor. So if you're wanting me to supervise you, I got you. And if you're wanting some type of coaching, let me know. Give this video a like if you are vibing with me and you'd like me to be your coach at some point. These are services that I am going to be bringing very, very soon. The next fear is the fear of dealing with the stigma. Social workers take kids away when you're introducing yourself. I don't see that as much anymore. So I did a poll, and this is what the results were. So I think it is a little bit 50-50. I think it's somewhat going away, which is a good thing. But you really have to get good at explaining your role and not taking it to heart when people have that stigma about social workers. Take it as an opportunity to clarify with that person who and what you represent. The next fear is the fear of not being healed enough to help others. Going to therapy, a therapist of your own, is super crucial. I did that for a very brief stint throughout my social work career because I just was not whole. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't feeling it. And a few sessions or two really got me back to balanced. It's okay to feel off balance sometimes. What we need to do is just realize when we don't feel like we're whole, we need to take action for ourselves. Don't just preach it. Also practice what you preach. The next fear is the fear that your degree won't be taken seriously because your university is small. It doesn't matter really what university you go to at all. It matters what your experience is, what your degree is, what your credentials are, what kind of certificates you get, how much you hustle. Basically, in this field of social work, the more experience you have, the better. Honestly, it's not so bad if that happens. I take that as an area of growth. Like now you know that you don't want to be in the school system. Good. Then you don't have to waste your time applying for those positions. But there are still transferable skills that you learned at that internship site. You learned how to deal with families, how to deal with children, how to deal with administrators, how to deal with communities and engage different professionals from teachers and nurses and school psychologists and other social workers. The next fear is the fear of getting attached. Boundaries are important. We need to understand that we are not in the position of rescuing anybody. It feels really nice to feel dependent upon, and I don't feel like any client necessarily needs to be rescued. If you're becoming attached to a client, it can be because they're triggering something within you that has to do with yourself and maybe also has to do with the idea that you're seeing them as a victim. So it's really important then to step back and maybe do a strength-based assessment with that client so you can see what all their strengths are. The next fear is the fear of basically the first year as a school social worker. You surround yourself with people that have done it before. If you know any, reach out to me if you need. Again, I said I'm going to come up with some coaching. I also have some tools up on this channel that are going to help alleviate some of those first time jitters. So be sure you check those out, and I'll link them above and below in the description box too. The next fear is the fear of being too exhausted to advocate for your clients on a macro level. We take on so much, and I know that I don't feel like I've been advocating enough. But the thing is you're advocating in every single right. So you want to really try to help the client advocate for themselves. Something little at like writing an op-ed for your local newspaper, that's advocating. That's putting it out there. Take little steps like that when you're feeling like you're sliding too much into the clinical realm. The fear of getting shot or assaulted in high crime areas. You know what? Call in a welfare check. Let the police do their job as well. Give them the address and then they just kind of check, and then they'll report back and let you know what the situation is. But never put yourself in a situation where you're feeling like it's just not a safe place. The next fear is the fear of looking young and not being taken seriously. I went through my social work program when I was 23. I didn't come in with a professional like hat on every single time, especially with parents or families. I really took the approach of learning from my client, and that really slows down the process a little bit, but it also builds rapport with the client to where they don't feel like you are wagging a finger in their face. And also, don't take anything to heart. So even if someone's not taking you seriously, understand where you've been. You've gotten 2 years of education at the master level. I mean, at some point, you have to be your own champion. You have to pat yourself on the back, give yourself the kudos. And I'm almost down to the end. The fear of your first postgraduate job applications, applying for jobs. I got you. There's a whole series on my YouTube channel, how to apply for jobs, how to get the job. And I know that they're working because you all have been messaging me. Head on over to that playlist. I'll link it again and put it down below in the description so that you have all that insight. The next fear is I won't be properly prepared when going into a new job. This is why I created my channel, is to help you to be a go-to social worker in your field. So a lot of times we are not properly prepared in our own minds, but in actuality, our degree proves otherwise. I don't want you to feel like you don't know your stuff. You know your stuff. You got this down. You just need to be sure that you're applying it and understand that no one else at the agency is coming from your specific framework. So please don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like you don't have it all under control. You will get there. You just have, like any other job has like a growing period, you need to allow yourself to grow. The next fear is the fear of boredom. Honestly, I don't get this one. I mean, there's a few people that relate to this one, but not very many, as you can see from the poll. But if you are bored with the population that you're in, switch it up. You have a social work degree where you can be super flexible. Challenge yourself. Go for that clinical license. Become a board-approved supervisor. Open up your own private practice. The last fear is the fear of groups and clients not connecting with you, and vice versa. That and vice versa is really key. To me, I hear this fear as a fear of not being able to build rapport, because connectivity Connecting with a client is really where you're building that trust and rapport with a client. Take time to do that. Don't rush into everything so fast. Another little tip is if you're not connecting with a certain individual, that's a sign that you might be in a cluster B type of situation. So this is a little insight that I got from my own supervisor when I was working towards my clinical license, is when you get that uneasy feeling and it's really hard to connect with a certain client, you might be seeing what is known as narcissistic personality disorder. I just want to share that little nugget of information right before I wrap everything up, which honestly, that's my veer, only because I've had personal connections there and a personal past with that. So I know for sure I would get triggered in that session. That's a whole nother video. I got through all of the fears, and if I didn't read yours, it's possibly because it kind of corresponded to something else. So I didn't want to get too repetitive in this one, and I also didn't get too deep either. I realized that I stayed really kind of vague and superficial, and that's just not me. So I am itching to get into these topics a lot deeper. If there is one in particular that you want to hear more about, please let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I am wishing you social work success. I hope you have a happy Halloween. And if it's not Halloween anymore, then I wish it was.